Thanks, Mike. Good morning, everyone. I guess I'll start off just to clarify real quick. Medtronic is actually based in Minnesota, but they keep me tucked away here in D.C. So that's why I'm able to join you this morning. And I'm going to start us off as the lawyer. I'll give sort of a basic framework of what are the legal requirements for recall. What's the legal framework, FDA's expectations? And then that'll kind of put us all on the same level or same playing field. I apologize to those of you who are already familiar with the FDA rules and requirements if I'm telling you things you already know, but we at least wanted to get the framework in place. One of the things I wanted to do up front was just, again, as part of that framework, give you some idea of what the numbers are like, how many recalls are done every year. And here are some numbers that actually my former colleague Areta Kupchik had put together of 5 years worth of recall data. I'm sorry I haven't updated it since 2010, or given the numbers since 2010. Stericycle, Mike's company, actually sends around a really nice newsletter, and a couple weeks ago they had an issue that gave updated numbers on the recalls for, I don't remember if it was 2011 or 2012, and I had hoped to put those into my slide, but then FDA came and visited one of our facilities about 3 weeks ago, and since then my attention has been focused solely on that. So I didn't get that into the slides today, so I'm going to have to give you 2-year-old numbers. But in any event, here's what it looks like. The drug recalls from 06 to 010. You see that ranging, 06, 07, around the 80 to 100 mark. 09, again around 100. 010, they jumped up. The largest concentration across the board was in Class 2, and I'll talk about what the different classes are in a moment. But a clear trend. Class 2 is the most common, and an uptick in recent years. The other trend I'll point out is that Class 3 recalls, the most serious ones, seem to have gone up too. They were higher in 06, they went down a bit, came back up. Whether that's a result of product mix, a result of FDA getting more strict in how they classified things, or FDA got more strict in how they classified things, and then as a result, industry as well tightened down and started calling more things Class 3 that might in past years have been Class 2, probably a mix of all of them, but a clear trend that, and you'll see that across the different products. Device recalls, similar trend, 06, 07, right around the 400 range, and the Class 2s around the 100. Class 2s went up considerably. Class 3s kind of stayed the same or even went down a little bit in 010. I think they went back up in 11. Biologics, interesting to note, the numbers in biologics are much higher when you look at absolute numbers. That's primarily because of blood. So blood is classified as a biologic, and it's the nature of that business. There are recalls in blood all the time because donors have issues or collection sites have issues. So it kind of skews the perspective a little bit. But there again, you see the trend upward in Class 2 growing the most. And again, I would say my quick look at the 11 numbers and the 12 numbers, that trend stayed that way. Class 2 remains the most common, and the numbers are about that high overall. So what's happened then, again, is the look at recalls as the numbers go up, and again, there's some question about chicken and egg, but there's increased scrutiny of recalls in the area, both by Congress, by consumer groups, by FDA, and there are lots of causes of that. One issue that drove it that really kind of pulled a lot of attention was a couple of years ago, J&J had what they called the phantom recall. And I'll talk about that a little bit, not to point fingers and laugh, but just because it's a useful learning tool for all of us. J&J had an issue with one of their OTC products where they found a problem with the manufacturing. And instead of doing the formal recall and going into FDA and putting out public notice and the full process, people were instructed, J&J employees or contractors, to essentially go out to stores and buy them and take them off the shelves that way and not tell anybody about it. This obviously is not how you're supposed to do it. This resulted in a lot of bad press, congressional hearings. J&J, which had a really strong consumer reputation in part because of how years ago they had handled the Tylenol recall, took a really bad public relations hit. Again, congressional hearings are never fun. They are time-consuming, they are costly. FDA reacted as well. Many inspections, there were inspections of J&J facilities, there were other audits done, other problems were found. Again, it it cascaded into many bad things, and it led to a, again, broader look across the industry. Is the recall process functioning right? Congress, as it always does when these things happen, started to look, do we need to pass new laws? Does FDA need more authority? Should they be ordering more recalls? Some bills were put into place, again, giving FDA more authority to order recalls, putting limits on what companies could sell if a product was recalled. In my area, the device area, there was a proposal that 510Ks could not be filed. 510K is a pre-marketing notification you give to FDA where you show your device is substantially equivalent to a device already on the market. And there was a proposal that if a product had been recalled, it could not serve as that predicate device. You couldn't base a 510K on that device. When you think about all the reasons you can trigger a recall, that really doesn't make a lot of sense. If you recall a product because of a manufacturing issue, does it make sense to say it can't be a predicate for design reasons? But in any event, none of these pieces of legislation went forward. They still simmer around. They may come up again because recalls, as Mike showed you, are not going away. They're not fading from public attention. So again, that's kind of the climate. Everybody thinks about them, looks at them, and rightly so. So with that background, I wanted to take us back, take a step, and talk about, okay, what does the law say right now about recalls? And I'll now give the preface as a lawyer I have to give whenever I speak. I work for Medtronic, but the views I express here today are my own. They don't represent the company, anybody at the company. When I tell stories or anecdotes, they will not be about Medtronic. As I'm sure you've seen in the news, Medtronic has had several large recalls in the past. I did not work on any of those, and as I always tell people, if I had, I wouldn't tell you about them anyway. So with that, what is a recall, right? What's the definition of a recall? And here it is straight from the regulation. It's a firm's removal and correction of a marketed product that FDA considers to be in violation of the laws it administers and against which the agency would initiate legal action. Okay, so something's wrong with the product, be it design, manufacturer, labeling, user error, whatever it is, something's wrong with it to put it in violation of FDA's laws, right? And FDA regulates all sorts of things about the product, as I just said, how they're made, how they're labeled, and any one of those can trigger, how they're designed, any one of those can trigger a recall. For the most part, recalls are voluntary action by the manufacturer. The manufacturer goes out and does it themselves to correct the product that's in violation. Right? So we go out, we take them back, we realize there's something wrong. It's an effective method to remove or correct products from the marketplace. And equally important as a practical matter, it's an alternative to FDA-initiated court action for removing these products from the market. FDA, even if they don't order a recall, and I'll talk in a minute about when they can and can't, but even if they don't, they can always take action. They can go to court and seize the product. They can say it's in violation of the law, it's unsafe, we're getting an injunction from the court, and we're seizing it. That is time and cost, that requires a lot of resources from the FDA and from the company. It's not particularly efficient for anybody involved. It's much better for all parties if the manufacturers realize there's a problem and take care of it themselves. And that's really how the system is set up to work, is to encourage those voluntary actions. And the stick is there. FDA can take action if they want. The other stick that FDA has that's actually much more powerful than the injunction is the power of the press. Right? I'm sure everybody remembers when David Kessler was the commissioner, the actions against orange juice and other seizures he did. But what that really did was it laid the groundwork that if FDA was going to go out and issue a public statement that, hey, we see a problem with this product, right, that really hurts a manufacturer. If FDA goes out and makes a public announcement there's a safety issue. Manufacturers want to avoid that. So FDA has a much less resource-intensive way of getting you to do that if they feel you're not taking your responsibilities seriously. Again, that's their other stick. Again, really it's the manufacturer that should be taking the action. We should be vigilant, but FDA can make you move if they want. Recalls, the term can be misleading sometimes, right? People hear the word recall, they assume you're going out and bringing the product back. Well, not necessarily. Just going to Mike's example of the seat, right? The first step that they took was not to go out to people's homes and bring them back, but was to send them instructions about how to use it safely than to send them the belt. I'm trying to remember back to when my kids were toddlers, and the thought of trying to strap them into one of those things is really not pleasant. My kids never held still long enough to stay in one of them, but I guess for some parents it works. But again, that's a recall, even though nothing's being brought back. Same thing for devices and drugs. Sometimes it's just additional labeling. It's just additional instructions. For devices, particularly for capital equipment, it may be somebody going out and fixing the device, where we're adding a part, we're removing a part, we're relabeling something. That's all considered a recall, even if you didn't bring it back. That can be confusing, and again, that can lead some companies to fall into the silent recall trap, right? The example I gave you of J&J earlier, oh, we can just go out, we fixed it, there's no problem now. No recall, no need to tell FDA, no need to issue all these press releases and get everybody all worried. No, if you went out and you fixed something, that was a recall. We try, in Medtronic, we try to use the term corrective action or field action, just because, again, I think our goal is to try and help people realize what the scope of it is, and particularly a lot of our products are implanted in people. They hear recall, they're afraid someone's going to come rip it out of their chest. No, that's not what we're going to do. We're going to instruct your doctor how to follow you better, whatever it might be. Again, the word field action, we hope, is a little less frightening. Field action sounds kind of scary too, but again, my point is recall is much broader than just bringing a product back. And so when you take actions, think about, are we triggering a recall when we did it? Are we going to have to follow all the FDA obligations? That's what a recall is. And again, it's very broad. But there are a few things that are not recalls. Firm's removal or correction of a market withdrawal, which is essentially, there's a minor violation which wouldn't be subject to legal action. So what can that be? You realize your products went out and the labeling's the wrong color. There's a typo in the labeling that's not significant to safe use, but just, you spelled your company's name wrong or something. You pull the products back to put in the right labeling. That's a market withdrawal. There's not a significant violation. You don't need to go through the recall process. The other is a stock recovery, which is removal or correction of a product that hasn't left your control. Right? Product's still in the warehouse, product's still at the distribution center, and we realize that we forgot to include the instructions for use in this particular batch. So we go out, we go back to all the boxes, we open them up, put the instructions in, repackage them. If they hadn't left our control, not a recall. We want to document carefully that we did it, but it's not a recall. One caution I'll throw out to you that one of my clients once learned the hard way, the